we see things like a dual stack as a migration technique to say, give them an IPv6 address, and only when they can't reach a service, give them a v4 address. You know, those types of strategies may be some of your philosophies for your end users. You may have other approaches. It's going to come down to business plans on how do we want to offer this service. Do we see this as some sort of premium, or is v4 a premium, or is it seamless to the customer and they should never know as long as their services work? You'll have to take those approaches and determine which way you're going to go with your services. In most instances, the end user doesn't care. If you ask them, do you want to use IPv6 or IPv4, they'll say, what's IPv6? You know, they won't know. So they just want the service. And so I think we're going to have to deal with that as an industry. It is more of a technology evolution than it is a whole new service offering. It may be an enabler for some new services and products going forward, but the customer doesn't care about how you get it. They just want the service.
Yeah, there's actually a different way of answering that question with a couple of different data points. I think there's no one up here saying that v4 is going to go away.
Right.
So that's the first thing to keep in mind. There's no magic cutover date or anything like that. So there will be still plenty of end users, with maybe the exception in not today and not tomorrow, but in some point in the future in the mobile world where v6 will become absolutely predominant unless v4 is required. But in the data center business, when you're looking at hosted players, you're pretty much, I mean, we sent out a letter 2 months ago to all our users that said, you know, at some point in time you want to be ready, and that doesn't mean in 3 years' time, that means sooner than later. So taking more content, taking hosted platforms, taking data center based websites and enabling them in the v6 world today does not mean turning off v4. It means enabling both. It means doing the appropriate QA and testing, so that as the consumers have additional ways of getting access to content, which, depending upon the operating system vendor, could simply mean the Microsoft Vista methodology, or if it's available on v6, connect that way first. That could simply be what means that the majority of traffic moves over to v6 at some point in the future. It's important for us to, and Cody mentioned this, at the wholesale level, we're already done. We're ready. And now it's just a case of making sure, as we're talking to customers, that they're also aware of what next to do. But there are many moving parts in this world. What's important is the preparation at every part is important at this point. Hopefully the end user, by the way, just opens up a laptop, types in a web address, or opens up email, and it's there. That's the ultimate test that this all works, is that they never see it.
Yeah, I hear about the dual stack model, and then huddled, and then 6 only. You say 6 only is a privacy mechanism. Have any of you looked at, or do you currently offer another component? In other words, is there maybe, instead of saying we're there because we have dual stack on our routing core, is there another component that says, well, we also offer a gateway service or some intermediary between data and or voice? I mean, is there an angle there? Is that a service offering that you currently have, or?
So for individual products and services that you may own, such as VoIP, for instance, if that is a service that is on my network, maybe I have a peering arrangement I can deal with too, I can probably implement application layer gateways or NAT-PT, network address translation, protocol translation gateways, but for the internet, it's not going to work. Matter of fact, there are RFCs out there to try to build the boxes, and they're deprecated because it was so difficult. They couldn't come to conclusions of ways to do it. So even in the testing environments that we've had, we know that when we own both ends, I own the end customer connection and I own an internal application I'm trying to provide the service to, I can use NAT-PT as a means to either delay upgrading the application or to speed up my access to that application for some duration of time, but I cannot front the internet with it.
And just to add to Fred's point, I've had similar discussions internally, and really what it boils down to is just to echo what he was saying. It's really more of a, I think what we're saying is like an interim step, right? You know, it allows you to kind of to move some of the endpoints that are talking to maybe, you know, a centralized service, you know, maybe that's key to voice or video or whatever, while allowing that that central component to find its way to a V6 ready version. But I think it's like Fred said, for the internet proper, it's a big challenge.
So it is a mitigation or migration strategy. It is not the migration strategy. You can't use that and only that to get by.
There's one subtlety though. The cool part about doing session border and in the VoIP world is that if you can essentially present your services as both a V4 and a V6 address, and you're in a network that is V4 and V6 enabled, outside of just finishing the rest of the DNS around that and doing your relationships to see whether you're doing voice peering or interconnects on V4 or V6, you're pretty much done. I mean, you're nearly king of the hill at that point in time because you've already taken advantage of being ready for a V6 world. Voice, at least at the session border level, may actually be one of the easier subjects where you wouldn't want to use a NetPT type environment in front of you. It would just simply be enabled in the V6 world, assuming that vendors have got, whatever vendor you've got the appropriate capabilities from.
So I guess one question or point to that is some of the work that we did for packet cable to a next generation technology that we use in cable. We talked about different scenarios where if your UE or your endpoint is not dual stack in nature, right, and you have a single stack endpoint of different versions, right? So let's say hypothetically speaking, Comcast was completely ready to go and take all of its next generation communications devices to a single version of IP, and that being IPv6. But I want to go and talk to somebody on Fred's network, and maybe that part of the world is, the Sprint world is not exactly ready, but I want to talk to them. I have an issue.
Absolutely.
I have an issue, right?
But if you had taken a V4 platform and enabled V6 and not turned off the V4, which is actually, unfortunately for you, one of the hardest things to do. So yes,
Right, so
by size alone, you're caught in that one.
Right, so that was exactly one of the scenarios that we kind of worked through. So this is not, this piece in particular is not Comcast specific. This was something that we had, in conversation amongst the community is in that situation, I just, if I leave V4 on, well, I'm still burning V4, right? I can't just turn it off. So, perhaps in smaller deployments or, for the near term, maybe having both going at the same time is an option, but it's certainly a challenge.
Well, I think even the comment that was made at one of the speakers this morning was that IPv4 is going to be around a long time, and I think we all agree with that in general. So it's more a matter of how do you maintain what's out there, and then all the new services that come up, Vista, new products that all come out that are V6 capable. You want to be ready to support that service. From a peering perspective and a VoIP perspective, to continue with this current line of discussion, in the presentation I put together, and I think it should be available on either the website or the disc that has been put together for this forum. One of the things I wanted to look at was how does it impact VoIP peering, and so I have kind of a series of questions that we don't have to necessarily answer all today, and some of them are specific to your own needs too, but there are things like how are you going to build an IPv6 network? Are you going to do it as a 6-to-4 tunnel overlay? Are you going to do it as a standalone network? Are you going to do dual stack? Are you going to continue with your peering arrangements that you do? And if so, are you going to use a session border controller in between, yes or no? There are just a lot of questions that you have to answer independently or with your partners to figure out how that works together. As a mitigation strategy, the other things you have to look at is for IMS for VoIP. Am I going to do that over SIP v4 or SIP v6? What are my peers doing? What are my expectations then on some sort of protocol translation? So a session border controller now may play a very important role in your peering connections because your partner may be 2 years ahead of you. They're already for v6 and you're not. So now both the SIP